How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good evening to
Good evening, Dr. Dubey.
good evening, Professor Menon and Saxena Saab. Good evening, Mr. Amit Ray also.
Session will start in a moment. Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
Yeah, Mr. Narendra, yes, you are audible.
Good evening to all. Everything in nature is made up of 5 basic elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space. Balance between these elements make a beautiful recipe that is called environment. When it is balanced, everyone in planet is happy. And when it is not, then we call it disaster. Everyone has seen the pandemic and lived its worst. Now, when we are recovering from this situation, we need a plan. We need a good execution against another unknown enemy. Hello, everyone. I'm Narendra Kumar Pankaj, Director Fulcrum Services, Fulcrum Group of Company. I'll be the moderator in today's event. I welcome you all in RAKSHA 2. And I would like to brief a bit about the event. Well, today is the day of disaster risk reduction. And this is from United Nations General Assembly. They have designated 13th October as International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. And the theme of this year is International Cooperation for Developing Countries to reduce their disaster risk and disaster losses. And we welcome you all to this webinar named RAKSHA Part 2. Well, in Hindi, it's mean defense. We may not manage disaster, but can have a strong defense over it. This is the first event of its kind, and this is the second year of its in domain, where industry leaders and academicians from eminent institutions are sharing their thoughts and trying to find the senses across industries and culture over disaster risk reduction. RAKSHA Part 2 in 2021 is the upshot by the joint efforts of ERDMP Academy in association with Fulcrum Group and the Institution of Engineers, supported by the HealthCrum platform, offering health and wellness corporates and individuals. We are live and viewers can watch this session live on HealthCrum's YouTube channel. Moving further, I would like to introduce today's events and the dignitaries. Today we are having 1 hour session in the backdrop of International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. And Dr. Rakesh Dubey, well, he is a CEO of ERDMP Academy. And also he is a specialist in disaster risk reduction, retired director, Disaster Management Institute, Government of MP. He is having 38 years experience in the area of environment and industrial safety disaster management, working at regional and national level and coordinating various states, providing technical leadership in making on-site and off-site emergency management plans, risk assessment, safety audits to various hazardous industries and states government like Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, etc. of India. Uh, we have also have two more eminent personalities. Ashwini sir, he is FIE engineer India, and Professor N. Vinod Chandra Menon sir, founder member National Disaster Management Authority NDMA Government of India. I would call upon Rakesh sir to take further this discussion, this session, so that everyone in this session take full advantage. Yes, sir. Rakesh sir.
Thank you, Mr. Narendra Kumar Pankaj, for moderating and coordinating this wonderful event. And I would like to welcome on behalf of organizers, Professor Menon, Menonji, who is well-known person in the area of disaster management, and I know him during his time of the membership. He was the founder member of NDMA, so he did wonderful job on the disaster management. I understand initially the first guidelines, if I am not wrong, there were two first guidelines launched simultaneously. One was on the earthquake, so he was coordinating, I remember it, and another was the chemical industrial disaster management. During his tenureship, we can record the fact that NDMA made very significant work, and it should continue. We wish, and I hope Professor Menon Saab will also wish to continue the legacy what the first group left in NDMA. And I request Menon Saab will definitely support this event further also in this area. Shri Saxena Saab, I also welcome to Saxena Saab. He is very active from the Institute of Engineers, and I understand he is a well-known personality in the Sustainable Development Group, and he is the chairperson of the BOG of Institute of Engineers, and doing a number of wonderful job on sustainable development goal, and we wish that he should continue on that. So coming to the topic of this, and no need to say about the Narendra and Mr. Ram, who were our coordinating person and supporting this event, and they are quite active in the IT sector. Last time we conducted almost 6 days program. We shared that platform, we shared that brochure with each of them, and we would like to think in such a way in future also. So this is something important for the coordination and networking. And Naren, can I share my slide?
Yes, sir, you can.
So I just
yeah,
please permit me. Yeah.
Yes, sir, already.
Yeah. My screen is not sharing. I don't. Now it is something is problem. It is not coming. The screen is not coming.
Sir, if you could share your PPT, I'll share from my side.
You will share from your side?
Yeah.
You got it?
On mail, sir?
Yeah.
Not yet, sir.
Not share?
Yes, sir. I just received.
Please.
Let me know. Okay, it contains only three. Okay, it's shared, sir.
Oh, you shared it?
Yes, sir. Is my screen visible?
Yes, I think. Yeah. So this is a very important agenda of this year about the networking and coordination with developing countries. So I thought that I should share something about uh, the concept of the sharing and the coordination. Next slide, please. So we took this, these are the point, to all the audiences, I would like to highlight the fact that uh, when this uh, Sendai framework for disaster reduction launched for the 2015 to 2030, at the same time, this Sustainable Development Goals 17 were also launched, and the time period was the same, that is from 2015 to 2030. And the 17 goal is very, very important. So when we discuss about this year themes on the disaster risk reduction, I understand that uh, uh, you can say, what the Sustainable Development 17 has agenda point, they are very relevant in the today's theme also. I would like to suggest, and I would like to advise to the audiences and also to the intellectual persons, that we should think it for these points which will make a sense of the today's or you can say this year's theme of International Day for Disaster Reduction. I would like to highlight one by one. Like first, let's start mobilize resources to improve domestic revenue collection. Because revenue collection is very important. And if we have that type of strengthening, definitely our DRR component will improve. Next is the implement for the all development assistance commitment. Whatever commitment for the development are required, we should think on the implementation. That will also important globally with the developing countries. Mobilization of the financial resources for developing countries, very, very important. Few other developing countries, and means these developing countries need financial resources. Without that, it is difficult to develop. How we should think for the assistance of developing countries in attaining debt sustainability. Debt sustainability is also very, very important. Without that, financial, sustainability cannot happen. And then we have to think for the investment, at least how we to invest on this concept for the developing countries. How we have to develop and how we have to think for the knowledge sharing and cooperation with science and technology and innovation. It is very, very important. And without innovation in science and technology, I think we cannot think for the disaster risk reduction. DRR need lot of innovation, lot of technology intervention and science development. Sustainability and promote sustainable technologies for the developing countries. Very, very important. We should have a sustainability of the technology. They should sustain. Then again, the next is the strengthen the science and technology innovation capacity for least developed countries. Those countries which are not even developed or are not under or those are the least developed. Even they are not the developing countries. We have to also them by developing the science and technology. Uh, this overall sustainable development capacity in developing countries is important. The 16 goals are very, very important. Poverty is important, urban planning is important. What not is important for the disaster. So everything is very, very important on that aspect. Promote universal trading. Without trading, it's very difficult. So trading is need to be developed so that this agenda of this year can be achieved. The export for the developing countries also needed in conjunction with the WTO this thing protocol. Then how we have to think for the removing of the barrier of these things. Then how we have to think for the global macro economy stability. Economy is stable is very, very important. If economy is not stable, we can understand how it is difficult to go for the DRR. Policy coherence is very important with respect to the sustainable development. Then respect of the national leadership to implement policies for the sustainable development goals. Enhance the global partnership for sustainable development is another important thing, and we should think it on that. Then the effective partnership and enhance available of the reliable data are very, very important. So this is something I thought in the limited time we can share it. We can think for in coming year to discuss all these things. Here, looking to the time frame and looking to the importance of our important guest also, guest of honor is Saxena Saab and Professor Menon, who is our chief guest. I think we should provide enough time to listen them. Here, I would like to stop my presentation and I am handing over this platform to Mr. Naren to push the further event. Mr. Naren, please
Yes,
go ahead.
okay. Let me call upon Mr. Ashwini K. Saxena. He is FIE Engineer India. He has obtained Bachelor's Degree from MANIT in 1972 and later did MBA from XISS. Nearly 5 decades of experience in public, private sectors and with government. And he also was General Manager with MECON, MECON, Executive Director, BPSL, Independent Director, India, RUSSULA, Spain, Chairman, SEAC, Jharkhand, constituted by MOEF&CC, Government of India. Currently, EIA Assessor with NABET, QCI, Independent Consultant, etc. He published, presented talks over 100 and received several awards, accolades, and has also contributed in books. He traveled widely in Middle East, Europe, USA, Africa, and Southeast Asia. He will be talking about possible role of institution of engineers in disaster risk reduction through innovation in infrastructure and industries. Over to Ashwini sir. Sir, your mic is muted.
Thank you very much, Naren. I would like to share my presentation. I think you can see it now.
Yes, sir. It is being shared. Yes, sir. Now it is visible.
Okay, I'm trying to make it full screen. Okay. I must compliment Fulcrum Enterprises and ERDMP Academic for celebrating this International Day for Disaster Reduction. perhaps very few people in the country would be knowing it, or maybe celebrating or seeing the importance of this day. Uh, I didn't know that I have to speak about Institution of Engineers, but I will certainly cover up about institution. And I would like to concentrate more on disaster risk reduction challenges and opportunities. Already, Dr. Dubey has covered up the significance of SDGs and Sendai framework. He has touched upon it. I will be dwelling little more about it. And we have some very eminent speaker who was the founder member of NDMA, Dr. Professor Vinod Menon. He would be covering most of the aspects of the disasters. So let us go forward. The first thing is that the International Day for Disaster Reduction was conceived way back in 1989. And at that point of time, it was thought of to be International Day for Natural Disaster Reduction. Later on in 2002, it became something little more added was that in national disaster reduction, including prevention, mitigation, and preparedness. And in 2009, the UN General Assembly decided to designate October 13 as the official date for this day, and also change the name to International Day for Disaster Reduction. Not only natural, but other sort of disasters also were covered up into this. Now, coming to the Institution of Engineers, it is the largest single professional body which was formed in 1920, given the Royal Charter in 1935, which is equivalent to the Act of Parliament. And it is a multidisciplinary society having 15 divisions, disciplines rather, starting from aerospace and ending at textile. And I am from mechanical division, but there is environment as well. And due to my professional experience in most of the time with environmental related issues, the president made me the chairman of the Board of Governors of Sustainable Development Forum. I'll come a little later. We have 125 centers spread in the country and 6 overseas chapters. And we have 6 forums at the moment. The 7th forum is coming up at Dehradun, which is on disaster management, which is being created, and by next year it will be functional. The Sustainable Development Forum, where I am the chairman, was established in 1998 for developing and promoting sustainable development in totality, and with an objective to promote, propagate the concept of sustainable development and to facilitate exchange of ideas. At that point of time, SDGs were not known. So you can think how forward thinking the Institution of Engineers is, that they thought in 1998 to start a Sustainable Development Forum. And at present, the forum is organizing webinars because of COVID pandemic. We could not do offline programs. So we are organizing webinars, and till date, we have done 14 of the webinars. And next couple of them are planned in end of this month or in November. Coming to disasters, we can think that we have 3 types of, we have natural and man-made disasters. And natural disaster can be meteorological disasters, topographical disasters, and environmental disasters. And coming to the man-made disasters, we have your nuclear, biological, chemical, and industrial, terrorism and insurgency, travel, and epidemics. Professor Menon, I am sure, will cover up most of them in his talk and when it comes to speak. Coming to Sustainable Development Goals, which were adopted by UN in 2015, they are 17 in number with 169 targets and over 230 indicators. And we have to achieve them by 2030. And because of this pandemic, we are going to spill over maybe by 2 to 3 years to achieve the goals. They address the 3 dimensions of development: social, economic, and environmental. And The last goal, that is 17, that is the international partnerships, that is what we are looking at this today. So these are the goals. Social goals are 1 to 6, economic goals are 7 to 12, environmental goals are 13, 14, and 15, and means of implementation, that is peace, justice, and strong institution is 16, and partnerships for the goals is the goal number 17. And here is that what we are like trying to talk about today. Disaster risk reduction cuts across different aspects and sectors of development. Actually, all these goals are interrelated. You will find that some of the targets are common between the various goals. There are 25 targets related to disaster risk reductions. 10 of the 17 goals they cover, and they're firmly establishing the role of disaster risk reduction as a core development strategy. As you see that goal number 1 that is no poverty. It is to build resilience of the poor and those in vulnerable situations and reduce their exposure and vulnerability to climate-related extreme events and other economic, social, and environmental shocks and disasters. The goal number 2, the target 2.4, which we have, is to ensure sustainable food and production systems and implement resilient agriculture practices. So this is under goal number 2. I'm just skipping because we have to finish off in next 10 minutes. I have to finish off. Then goal number 3, good health and well-being. That related with the disaster is strengthening the capacity of all countries, in particular developing countries, for early warning, risk reduction, and management of national and global health risks. Coming to goal number 4, we have target 4.7 and 4A. That is 4 is the objectives, and 4.A is means how to achieve the target. Ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills. And 4A says build and upgrade education facilities that are child disability and gender sensitive and provide safe, non-violent, inclusive, and effective learning environment for all. Then we have goal number 6, that is clean water and sanitation, and the target is 6.6. That is by 2020, protect and restore water-related ecosystems, including mountains, forests, wetlands, rivers, aquifers, and lakes. And then we have the goal number 9, which is industry innovation and infrastructure. And that goal number target is 9.1 and target 9A. Develop quality, reliable, sustainable, and resilient infrastructure. This is very important. And that thought process is mostly getting implemented when we are talking about smart cities. And smart cities take care of most of these aspects. And the target 9A, that facilitates sustainable and resilient infrastructure development in developing countries through enhanced financial, technological, and technical support. Then we come to next is related to disaster is goal number 11, that is sustainable cities and communities. Here we have target 11.1, 11.3, 11.4, 11.5, 11B, and 11C. This is the one of the goals which has maximum relationship with disaster reduction. Next, we come to the climate action. If you think about or you introspect or you go into detail, climate has got a vast, very, very big impact on the disaster. And today, when we have cyclones, the frequency of cyclones, the number of cyclones coming in, all this because most of them is because of the climate change and disasters because of heat waves. In Europe, heat waves are being felt. And so we can see that the climate change has having a great impact on disaster. And here the targets are 13.1, 13.2, 13.3, 13A, and 13B. So I'm not reading out, they're available freely. And then we come to life below water, that is goal 14, and in which the target of 14.2 is that by 2020, sustainable manage and protect, 2030, not 2020, protect marine coastal ecosystems to avoid significant adverse impacts. See, maximum of the oxygen comes from oceans. 70% of the oxygen is from the oceans and about 28% is from the land. And mangroves and the coastal areas have contributing a large part of oxygen which we require for our breathing and to live. So we have to take care of life below water. And then we have another goal 15, that life on land. Again, our environmental aspects or environment management or pollution control is very important. And whatever we have lost our biodiversity, or we have to conserve and restore sustainable use of inland water, freshwater ecosystems, as well as other aspects of biodiversity which we have to look, which is managing the forest or halting deforestation, and you're improving the degraded forest. This year we had the World Environment Day theme as restoration of ecological aspects. So these we are thinking, we are moving forward, but still lot is to be done. Next, we come to the Sendai framework. This was, as Dr. Dubey mentioned, this also started in 2015, and the target of getting into by getting the goals completed by 2030, same as Sustainable Development Goals. They have 7 global targets, 13 guiding principles, and 4 priorities of action. I'm coming to the next slide. The priorities action is understanding disaster risk. Then priority 2, strengthening the disaster risk governance. Third priority is investing in disaster risk reduction. And priority 4, enhancing disaster preparedness for effective response and to build back a better world. We have to, the objective is to reduce mortality, reduce the affected people, reduce economic losses and damage to critical infrastructure and disruption of basic services. Then increase countries with national and local disaster risk reduction strategies, and international cooperation and availability and access to multi-hazard early warning systems. This is required. And if you look at the interrelationship between SDGs and the Sendai framework, you will find that they're interrelated. You can see we can watch that goal 1, goal 11 targets, the various targets, they are also covered with Sendai framework. So both are, you have lot of things which are in common between SDGs and Sendai framework. And then if you move forward, and if you come, the importance of climate change is on disaster is that 76% of all disaster events are climate related, and accounting to 45% of deaths and 79% of economic losses. We must reduce underlying risks and vulnerability to extreme climate events like floods, drought, and storms. And a lot has been done. I think Professor Menon will cover up, may speak. I've heard him speaking earlier, and he covers up all these in details with the statistics. So I leave it to him to cover up. I don't know whether he's going to do that today or not, but yes, he has enormous data. Being a founder member of NDMA, he has everything on his tips, and the photographs which he has are really shattering. You will shatter sometimes to see what has happened because of the disasters. And then disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation occurring across development issues, political, scientific, social, and development, humanitarian. And last, we come to the disaster reduction is the concept and practice of reducing disaster risk through analyzing and management of their causes, factors, reducing exposure to hazards, lessen the vulnerability of people and assets, improving management of the land and environment, and preparing for adverse events. I thank once again Narenji and the participants for giving me this opportunity to have share my views, and I look forward to hearing from Professor Vinod ji. Thank you very much. Over to you, Naren.
Thank you, sir. Let me call upon Professor N. Vinod Chandra Menon, sir, founder member, National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA, Government of India. He has over 37 years of working experience, of which more than a quarter century has been spent in the field of disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, and public policy analysis. He has been in charge of emergency preparedness and response in UNICEF India country office from 2002 to 2005. Professor Menon was nominated by Dr. Manmohan Singh, the Prime Minister of India, in 2005 as one of the founder members of the National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA, Government of India, with the status of a Union Minister of State in the Government of India. Sir has eminent personality, so let me not brag much and let the horse talk about himself. So I'll call upon Sir to talk about further and enlighten us on this topic. Thank you, sir. Sir, your mic is muted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Narendra Pankaj. Wonderful opportunity to share with all of you on the auspicious day of the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction, which is observed on the second Wednesday of October every year. And so today we are actually having this International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. And I would like to thank the organizers, Fulcrum Group, Healthcrum, and ERDMP Academy, and the Institution of Engineers. And we listened to a wonderful presentation by Mr. Ashwini Saxena Sab on the Sustainable Development Goals. And I believe, as Dr. Dubey mentioned, the 17th Sustainable Development Goal on partnerships is the most important sustainable development goal. I believe that because international cooperation is important, cooperation within the stakeholder groups within the countries are important, and at the national level, state level, and at the district level, this is very important. So I would like to share a few thoughts on this particular day with all of you on the need for emphasizing international cooperation to reduce disaster risks and disaster losses. Are you able to see this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as Saxena Sab mentioned, the multi-hazard disaster scenario looks at different types of disasters. There are different disaster typologies. Geological disasters looks at earthquakes, landslides, and dam failures. Hydrometeorological disasters look at floods, cyclones, hailstorms, heat waves and cold waves, snow avalanches, droughts, lightning, cloudburst, etc. Industrial disasters, also called chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear emergencies. Strength area of Dr. Dubey, who has actually led the Disaster Management Institute in Bhopal, which faced, the Bhopal city faced the greatest and the most devastating chemical disasters, the Union Carbide gas leak in 1984. And so chemical disasters, gas leaks, as we have seen in many cities in India, and explosions and fires, mine fires and oil spills, oil fires like the Indian Oil Corporation fire in Jaipur was something which was very devastating. And we see this, fires happening in in oil tankers, petrol tankers, and in many locations within the country. So mine fires, oil spills, and electrical fires are also very important. And epidemics, cattle and poultry epidemics, and the pandemic like the COVID-19, which is a global pandemic which has affected 221 countries in the world. Climate change, very important. It is also mentioned as one of the most important events happening. And we are also seeing global warming. We are seeing glacier melt. We are seeing, desertification. And we are also seeing many such changes, including the sea level rise, etc. Extreme events are happening. We suddenly see cloudburst, and we suddenly see a large, massive flooding, which happens in many parts of the world because of what is called unprecedented rainfall. And unprecedented rainfall is now becoming very precedented. Hello? And we also have accident-related disasters like stampedes, which happen in festivals, drowning, air, rail, road, and ship accidents, boat capsizing, building collapse, etc. These are different types of disasters, and these the dimensions are also changing. And the bottom line of disaster management is that anything can happen anytime, anywhere. And so, which means we need to be really prepared, and that is where international cooperation and understanding from the good practices become extremely important. So we've seen in the recent past, we've seen wildfires in Turkey, Greece, Australia, and even in California. And we saw floods happening in Germany, in China, and Austria, and England. We saw heat waves in Europe. And we also are witnessing the COVID-19 pandemic. Several waves of the COVID-19 pandemic are happening in 221 countries around the world. And we also see that the pandemic is actually also morphing to so much so that Lancet in an editorial said that COVID-19 is not a pandemic. And the editorial said COVID-19 is a syndemic, SYNDEMIC. And what is a syndemic? A syndemic is a series of epidemics, happening in a sequential manner. So which means that, the pandemic, actually, we saw the mutations happening for the virus. And we have been seeing all kinds of Greek letters being mentioned, alpha, beta, in iota, delta, and so on. So it's very important that we understand epidemiology, and we understand how the international cooperation can really help us understand each other better. So there are areas like training and capacity building, and education and distance education in the field of disaster management and emergency management, and climate change, early warning systems and sharing of technological know-how, experience sharing of good practice case studies. And so we have the ERDMP Academy also having several case studies and good practices of mock drills happening in terms of hazardous chemicals. And we need to have off-site and on-site plans and exercises to be conducted to check and validate our own levels of preparedness. And multilateral and bilateral donors participating in supporting research, action research, applied research, and also supporting international NGOs, national NGOs, and grassroots level, organizations, community-based organizations, civil society organizations, etc. And we also have exchange visits and study visits when we can actually learn from good practices of other countries, and also good practices within our own country across states. Because if good practices in flood management or cyclone management by Orissa is to be studied and understood by Andhra Pradesh and by Tamil Nadu and West Bengal and so on. So we need to understand from even within the country. Similarly, international conferences, we will also be looking at some of these opportunities of understanding. And COVID-19 has also shown that now webinars are happening almost every day. We are having invitations for several webinars. And today, because of the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction, we are also seeing so many webinars happening. In fact, immediately after this, there is another webinar happening. And so that is one of the reasons why we will actually be limiting this for 1 hour from 4 to 5 o'clock. And COVID-19 caseload trend tracking and excess death studies. We have seen that excess death studies have been done by many people like Dr. Brahmar Mukherjee in the University of Michigan, Dr. Ashish Jha in Brown University, and also Arvind Subramanian and many others, Murad Banaji in Middlesex and so on. So we have also web portals, like we have a web portal called covidtoday.in, which is actually fielded by and hosted by the epidemiologists, doctors, data scientists from many institutions, and also alumni from many medical schools around the world. We also have another COVID dashboard, which is hosted by thinkief.org, which is actually a COVID dashboard, which looks at all the 24 wards of the Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai, MCGM, and 229 high incidence districts in the country, which are hotspots, which are also being tracked by the COVID dashboard. And in terms of international institutions and networks, I'm very happy to share some of the outstanding work which is actually happening. The International Emergency Management Society in Oslo, Norway, and Brussels, Belgium, websites are there on teams.org and teams.info. And Capacity Building International, which is based in Texas in the US, and also in Kyiv in Ukraine, capacitybuildingint.com. And the RIMES, which is the Regional Integrated Multi-Hazard Early Warning System for Africa and Asia, which looks at weather patterns and changes in micro weather and microclimate. So RIMES.int. And Asian University Network of Environment and Disaster Risk Management, AUEDM.net, which is actually connecting many universities teaching disaster management in Asia Pacific. And we also have the Viro Commission based in Brooklyn in New York, which is connecting grassroots women leaders organizations in 50 countries around the world. So the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center in Bangkok, ADPC.net, ADPC also conducts training programs and capacity building initiatives in many countries around the world. And we also have recently established the Indian Universities and Institutions Network for Disaster Risk Reduction, IUIN DRR at the National Institute of Disaster Management in the Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India. So if I mentioned about the International Emergency Management Society, which has a certification in emergency management. There are two organizations which are doing this kind of certification. One is the International Association for Emergency Managers, IAEM, which is based in Canada. And so when you Google IAEM, you will see that they do a certificate in emergency management, and Teams does the TQC and TQAC, which is actually the recent certification which has been introduced. And right now there are 8 people who are certified in TQC. And if you see the names of these people, they are basically from Australia, the US, Nigeria, and Jordan, Australia, China. And you have one person from India, and that's me. And that's the 8 people certified in TQC, and 8 out of the 8 people, I am the first Indian to have been certified, and I would encourage people to participate in this TQC certification process. And, so I think that, this kind of opportunity, and they also have Teams has been doing these webinars with Capacity Building International. There is a webinar happening day after tomorrow, and, with the University of Manchester and many other partners. So for those who are interested, I'll be happy to share the link, and you go to tiems.org, teams.org, or tiems.info, teams.info. You can see these discussions happening, and you can also register for this. These are free webinars which are happening, so you'll be happy to attend this and understand from the training and capacity building which is actually happening. And there is also an annual conference which is happening in Paris in December, from 6th to 10th of December. This is the Teams annual conference is happening in Paris, and this is the 28th annual conference which has been happening because Teams has been established in 1993, and they have been conducting annual conferences. And there is a Teams chapter, India chapter. In India, we have a Teams chapter, and so this will be possible to also collaborate in information sharing, exchange of good practices, and so on. Now, in terms of international cooperation, the early warning systems and sharing of technologies and know-how is very important. Experience sharing of good practice case studies is very important. And also the interactions with multilateral and bilateral donors is important. So lastly, I would like to just mention about this Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, CDRI, and the International Conference on Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, which you can see on icdri.cdri.world, which is an international conference which is addressed by several prime ministers, including the Prime Minister of Italy and the Prime Minister of India and the Prime Minister of Fiji, and many other ministerial delegations participated in that. It was a virtual conference this year. And so it's important that we have such international collaborations and international cooperation on CDRI, hosted in Delhi by the National Disaster Management Authority, Government of India, and the UNDRR. And the institutional partners are ADB, World Bank, UNDP, and UN Office of Disaster Risk Reduction, UNDRR. ARISE, which is a private sector alliance for disaster resilient societies, and the Coalition for Climate Resilient Investment. And finally, the European Union. These are institutional partners, and more organizations, international organizations, are joining CDRI. And in terms of partnerships, as I mentioned earlier, SDG 17 partnership is the most important SDG. And we are safe only if everyone is safe. And that is a message from COVID-19. And this is a message from UNDRR, which the Secretary General mentioned. And IPCC 6th report was, emphasized as the climate change is a code red for humanity. And so said Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General. And leave no one behind. It's important that we should not leave out marginalized and vulnerable sections of the communities. Interstate migrant workers, as we saw, went through a lot of trouble. We saw construction workers, we saw the problems of agricultural labor, the farmers, and many others. So Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure has a large number of countries as members, including India. And it's important that this kind of exchange of information across countries is important. And what we are seeing today, this webinar, which is being organized by the HealthCrum, Fulcrum Group, and also ERDMP Academy and Institution of Engineers, is one such event in terms of partnerships and collaboration. I wish them all very best, and also hope that these kind of experience sharing will take greater public awareness, and all of you who are listening to this would also reach out and compliment and then support each other. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Now I call upon all the three eminent speakers to have a conclusive discussion.
Professor Menon, good evening, and good evening to all of our audiences. You highlighted very nicely about these international agencies and international collaboration and coordinating fora. Can we think to have outreach programs with the support of these international forum or fora? Is it possible? We can think it. And how? The second question is this.
Yes, there are many international cooperation efforts happening right now in academia. You can see international cooperation happening across academic institutions, joint collaborations and joint research projects, and also many joint studies are being taken up. We are also participating in a program called eYantra Initiative with IIT Bombay hosting it. And there are many colleges, engineering colleges in different states of the country. And now many other engineering colleges in other countries in the region, in South Asia, is coming together. We also have networks which are actually operating. There's a network called SATHI, SATHI, which is a South Asia Together for Humanitarian Imperatives. So these are all cooperations and international collaborations happening between networks and groups. So there is a possibility that there could be many things right now because of the COVID. Travel is actually restricted, but however, there can be a lot of collaborations which can be done virtually through electronic media.
Okay, good. I have one more idea with for consideration to the whole floor, including Sakshana Sab also. I understand that but I'm going to say it should make some sense for the disaster risk reduction. You see, the forum or this platform through which this webinar is organized, this is the second series. The name itself says ERDMP Academy, meaning to say we are highlighting the importance of environment, rehabilitation and disaster related things, not only through commercial activity, but through the academic this thing concept. So our mode of working is this, that we are slightly linked towards the linkages with the PSUs. And I would like to share to this floor that this academy is one of the third-party agency on behalf of Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board of MOPNG, Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. They have authorized this academy for the certification of disaster management plan. There is a separate regulation. It is governed by their ERDMP regulation 2010. And I understand this is a wonderful document having guidelines, and it plays a mentor role also. This is on that basis. So we are having certain linkages with the PSUs and with the corporate sectors. I am thinking, and I'm of the experience I experienced during my directorship of the DMI, that academic front is still missing. People don't know much about the on-site plan, off-site plan.
It seems network is in problem from Rakesh's end.
There is one question which has come up in the chat by Mr. Nagarajan. He's asked whether, with the tendency and conflict of power, how can we expect real cooperation and real coordination among countries? Now, this is a very sensitive question, but however, we need to be realistic that in the geopolitics, even in the subcontinent, we are actually seeing a lot of tension between countries, and that is one of the reasons why we are also seeing that SAARC has become, the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, has become weak because of the geopolitics in the subcontinent. However, we need to also see that there is a need to strengthen intergovernmental platforms. So we have now so many multiple intergovernmental platforms in the region. We have the Indonesian Regional Association, we have IORA, and we have the organizations which are there. BIMSTEC is there, and then we have many such organizations which are there in the region. So I think we need to still work together and struggle together, and there also has to be a track 2, which is a soft diplomacy by technocrats and by diplomats and by academia, which can also happen, and that's also happening now in many parts. We are also doing a lot of track 2 soft diplomacy, people to people interactions. I think Dr. Dubey's internet connection is a little unstable. Any comments, any responses?
We got one response in chat from Suresh Kumar Adhichan. He is writing, 31 million people around the world moved in the extreme poverty. It is expected to grow 700 million by 2030. Around 30 million children missing vaccines. 10 million due to COVID, 80% COVID vaccine administered by high and upper middle income countries. This is high time to rely the SDG and timelines. What do you say?
Yes, success of SDG, your field.
Already the thought process is on in this regard. People are thinking, and each one is of the time frame UNEP, UNDP, everybody is thinking about it. And they are debating on this, how to extend the timeline from 2030 onwards. There are several, if you go on the internet, you will find so much debates going on the COVID and impact on SDGs. And I think definitely it may go for 2030, may be shifted to 2035 minimum, because this 2 years impact is not exactly 2 years. It is going to enlarge by 2 years, maybe 5 years. I cannot say at the moment what is happening, but yes, the thought process is on, and our Niti Aayog is working very hard for as far as the coordinating amongst various states in India. They have a separate setup, and if you go to the net and see their annual reports of Niti Aayog on SDGs, I think one of the most wonderful work, and other governments are asking help from Niti Aayog to share their experience and share their software details, how to go about the evaluation of the implementation of SDGs. I can say that that's all at this more point of time. Thank you very much.
I request attendees, if you have any questions, you can. Yes, we have one more chat from Suresh. Outreach programs with a special focus on community-based DRR will attract more partners from national and international levels. Promoting integrated on-site and off-site DM plans at every industry is the present request.
Actually, that is very much needed. Community-based disaster risk reduction is really critical, because we have seen that one of the studies recently has mentioned that in those countries where the communities are actually very cohesive, the case impact of COVID-19 has been very well controlled. If a community is connected, well connected. But however, we see that linking to the earlier question, communities have to be center staged in emergency preparedness and response, but it is not really happening. Communities are actually becoming hit because of many reasons, and we saw during the COVID-19 that there was a problem, shortage of ICU beds, shortage of beds in hospitals, shortage of oxygen cylinders, oxygen concentrators. It had to be imported, but international cooperation really helped a lot. And we saw that there were also people who were helping, but this question of vaccine inequity is very important. The third world countries, the developing countries, are really facing a lot of difficulties in access to vaccines, affordability of vaccines, and so on. So there are many issues actually. And the last 2 years, the COVID-19 impact, 2019 and 2020 and 2021, we have actually seen that these last 2 years, 1.5, 20 months now, almost, we see that the impact has actually really set back the gains of Sustainable Development Goals, Sendai Framework, and also Paris Agreement, and many other, international agreements. It's very important that, we continue to cooperate, collaborate, and work together.
One more response from Nagarajan Krishnamurthy. Citizens must think of their fundamental duties while fighting for fundamental rights. Citizens are also accountable and responsible for every doom and gloom. Yeah, definitely. Any take on this? One more chat from Suresh Kumar. Thanks for the response. Okay, he's thank you. Well organized. Any response and notes from you, sir?
Thank you very much. We need to all work together, and that I think is the.
Rakesh sir is with us now again.
Sorry, sir, I was disconnected due to some internet problem.
Yeah, Mr. Meena.
Narenji.
Yes, Mr. Ram, you have raised your hand. Do you...
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for such a great webinar, sir. I have one simple query. A long time, I'm not that much expert like you all. I can say I'm the least person who knows anything about the disaster management and resilience. But I'm wondering that in metros they are getting overcrowded, and somehow they are affecting the environment, and those locations are where the people are coming up with a lot of industrialization, and a lot of things are coming up that area, and somehow they're affecting the environment. Uh, I believe that could be a biggest point for a disaster and to be focused. I just want to understand how the government or how the because you are the right person to ask the question, because you being an engineering side and the government side, both the sides. So how government has managed, you people are thinking on this part, because somehow today, this is for example a recent thing in Delhi. It's a coal has been some electricity issues going on. Before that, the environment issue is coming up in Delhi every year. So how these things can be controlled? I understand it's everybody has to give their part, but is there any future plan on this part or something?
Can I answer? Ram, you have raised a very pertinent issue. Several years ago, a report was prepared on carrying capacity of National Capital Region, and that was prepared by no less than NEERI. And there were some very, very astounding facts which came to the light, like grapes coming from Hyderabad to Delhi and then going back to Bhopal and Jaipur. Why all the way they should come to Delhi? Once you have, so there is all these things they were highlighted in that report. If those aspects are implemented and we create satellite cities like Sonpat and others, Palwal, Sonwapat and others which we create, which are in the periphery of Delhi, I think a lot of problems will be reduced. But everybody wants to go to Delhi. Everyone wants to go to Connaught Place. So the problem starts from there. So if we segregate, we have better facilities. I'll give you another example. I think 20 or 30, 25 years ago, there was a corridor to be built up between Bangalore and Mysore that was supposed to be known as NICE road, and which every 100 or every few kilometers there was to be one satellite city coming up. But that did not happen. And the result is the Bangalore city is totally overcrowded. Had that concept been adopted, I think a lot of pressure would have been out of Bangalore. So similarly, for Delhi, if you develop Panipat, Sonpat, adjoining areas which are 30 kilometers on the radius, and provide logistics, proper logistics, and people give them all amenities at that particular place, these problems will vanish. Because I have gone through that report maybe 15, 20 years ago. That's a wonderful report prepared by NEERI. If you can get it from MOEF or you can get it from NEERI for reading. I think that will answer most of your queries. Thank you.
Thank you very much for such an explanatory question. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
We have one chat.
Ram, I would like to due to some internet issue, I was disconnected.
It happens, sir. This is one of the disasters which now is going on. It is the internet disaster, we can say. Recently we faced too.
Okay. On the response of Ashwini sir, Nagarajan ji have replied that educational institutions must take the responsibility to shape and sharpen the minds of the students, the future of the world, in a way to servicing the community without selfishness. Definitely, it is the next.
I think Professor Menon has put it in a very, very apt way in his reply to one of the questions or one of the queries which have been raised. That is also very important, that we citizens ourselves are to blame for the disaster in several disasters. Because if we don't follow the citizen, what we have to do, say stampede. Why stampede happens? selfishness and trying to say in temples, crowd and other things. So we have citizens are to be responsible, but very well said that educational institutions must come forward with courses and to tell what is disaster, how it can be prevented, online, offline disaster management plans, which Dr. Dubey has prepared, not only for small industries, for Tata Steel he has prepared. Way back 10 years back, Tata Steel engaged DMI to prepare a disaster management plan, and a wonderful plan he had prepared. So we have it with each district collector or district magistrate plan, a disaster management plan is there, but it's all in the shelves. It is all lying in the shelves. Nobody is willing to take it out and read it, what is going to happen. If this, certainly when something happens, then you start falling back on their disaster management plan. But more has to be done, more has to be looked into, and yes, the courses have to be devised. There are, so Professor Menon has come out, has shown in his slides how the institutes are coming forward. But we have so many of institutions in today's in India that not everyone, only few will be doing those, adopting those curricula in their setup. But things are changing. Even in school level, certain aspects are being covered. I think that's all what I would like to say on that point.
I think one of the most
I would like to put one more point with the with Saxena Saab statement, that we have to think for auditing of these disaster management plans, whether these plans are okay or not. So I think whatever you have established this new group in Institute of Engineers, let's take that challenge with Institute of Engineers, and we can approach to other authority ultimate in last to formalize some regulation or some like that, something.
I think one of the lessons from the COVID-19 is also that alumni from different educational institutions have really come forward. Whether it is the National Law School, University, or alumni of the Asim Premji University or Ashoka University or JNU. There are many university alumni came together and helped each other and helped their neighbors and helped their neighborhoods. So I think that kind of collective work has actually happened. And we saw when the migrant workers were traveling back to their villages, we saw there were lots of people who came forward to provide food and everything, support them in their travel, make arrangements, including, the kind of help which was rendered to critical patients. Even arranging air ambulances, we have seen how air ambulances were arranged by some people. So there is a lot of compassion. But we must have the passion to really help each other when there is a crisis. And I think that is also something very important. So I hope that RAKSHA will continue to provide these kind of platforms. Just a suggestion on the name, Mr. Naren Pankaj mentioned that RAKSHA is mainly defense. It's also safety, but safety is actually Suraksha. So a suggestion from my side is that, if you can actually put Suraksha as the campaign, that everybody's safety and security is our responsibility. Otherwise, it has a defense, strategic defense connotation. Like Raksha Mantri, is seen as the person who is supposed to protect, the civilians in the event of any external aggression. But so instead of Raksha, if you use Suraksha, that will be something which will be close to the heart of everybody. The citizens, the common people, and even the corporates, they will be coming forward. They'll be happy to come forward and extend support. This is just a suggestion for your consideration.
It was a very good suggestion.
Is really
we will definitely put into our consideration, and definitely this is very good idea even. What would you say, Mr. Ram?
Absolutely, it was a great. It's coming from the expert, so I felt that it should not be Raksha, it should be Suraksha, definitely. Definitely, sir. We'll consider it, and next time when we'll be happy to call you in a Suraksha event. Definitely, sir. Thank you very much for such a great sir.
Actually, I have one point I want to talk 1 minute. My name is A.K. Arora. I'm retired from OIST and doing this ERDMP certification for quite some time. One point which I want to put to this August group is that biggest disaster, one of the main contributing factor to the enhancement of disasters which are happening is because root cause of those disasters is the population explosion, which is happening across the world and more prominently across our country. So I like to understand from the expert groups whether there are any programs to contain that component of population explosion containment. I thought I will put this point before we close.
Yes, Arora Sahab, actually, it's a very important consideration. However, I think if you look at the last 3 generations, look at your grandfathers and your grandfather and your parents and yourself, and look at the next generation, your children, we will see that number of children are actually coming down compared to our grandparents, and our parents. In fact, I am one of 5 people in my 5 children in my family, and I have 1 daughter, and my mother was one of 10 children, and there were 16 children in my grandfather's family, and only 10 of them survived beyond the age of 5 because of poor health facilities at that time. So I think from 16 children, 5 children to 1 child, it has happened in the last 100 years, less than 100 years. Yeah,
Menon sir, that is happening in the educated class, but the net result is that we are moving from say 100 crore to 105 crore, 130 crores now, and very soon we will be touching 140 crores. So that is the root cause. As per my feeling, that is the root cause of disaster components, attributing to disaster components. So I wanted to understand whether any programs are there, or any Niti Ayog's thought is there for controlling this aspect, or will continue as it is continuing?
Well, nice question, Arora sir. Due to the time constraint, we will take your question and we'll ask separately with Menon sir and respond to this question on our platform. So it's time to close the this webinar because of time constraint.
Okay.
And I hope everyone has got the nice information and important information. And I would like to thank to all the eminent panelists for enlightening us about many plans which government is making, and they are not only planning, they are executing as well. So thank you, Menon sir, thank you, Saxena sir, and thank you, Dubey sir, for sharing your knowledge and plans with us. And thanks to all attendees for investing your valuable time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Can we request everybody to have their videos unmuted so that you can take a picture so that it will be for record?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please open your videos, everyone. It is a request. We will have a commemorative shot. Yeah, and 5 count, I'm going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.